Hello Noodle fans. It comes to no surprise that Noodle House has been trying to aim over the last 18 months to being as sustainable as possible. We've driven activations as removing single plastic from all our restaurants, from packaging to straws to the single-use plastic bottles of water. Aside from that, we wanted to take the next step and see what it is that we could do from an environmental point. I'm really happy to introduce you James Purton. He's a representative of McFarlane, which is our kitchen maintenance supplier. Please take us through what exactly is McFarlane.
Yep, thanks Steve. So McFarlane's Alpha, or MCFT, we were set up in the UK in 1992. We're a specialist provider of kitchen maintenance services, so planned maintenance, reactive maintenance and repairs. We've been in the Gulf now for 5 years and our whole ethos is trying to emulate best practice that we see in the UK business.
Okay, so how does that correlate to sustainability though?
Okay, yeah, so I guess to give some context behind it, there's different types of refrigerant. There's R404A, there's R134A. They're the typical ones that we're seeing in estates like the Noodle House. These types of refrigerant, they've got a global warming potential. So this categorises them in terms of the potential damage they can cause to the environment. There's obviously best practices in terms of maintenance, handling and use of these refrigerants. We're very familiar with this in terms of our UK operation and how we operate. Your technicians have to be F-gas trained. There's all these different rules around it. It's a lot less stringent, let's say, in the Middle East, and some common practices that we hear about or we see is that a service provider might hear that the fridge is running at a high temperature. Rather than identify the leak and correct the problem, they'll top it up with gas. It'll work for a week, a few more days, fridge gets high temperature again, they'll come back, they'll top it up with gas again. And what we're doing differently is we're going to be reclaiming the refrigerant, pressure testing the system, identifying the leaks and then repairing them. So there's a few benefits to that. You've obviously got the environmental benefit. You're not damaging the environment by releasing the gases. You've got the ongoing maintenance costs that you'll be saving for the fridge. That's because it's running efficiently. It's not putting a strain on the fridge. It'll last longer. And also it will save you more on your electricity bills. So it's not costing as much to run the same unit.
Talk me through that reclaiming the gas process. Is that cost effective? Does that how difficult it is to do, and how do you guarantee that it gets done?
Yep, so technicians do need to be trained to do it, and you do have to invest in some equipment. So you need recovery units and recovery cylinders. There would be one cylinder for 404, one cylinder for 134. They can't be mixed, so it can't be recycled, it can't be purified if those are mixed in the same cylinder. And the process would be that the technician comes to start at the call out, so the unit's running high, he does his fault finding and he finds the unit's low on gas and there's a leak. He would come to repair it, he'd attach his gauges, they would recover the refrigerant out of it, they would then pump nitrogen through the unit so they can test the pressure, they would identify where the leaks are, if they can repair it they would. We would then do the reverse process and top the fridge back up at the right pressure with the right refrigerant. And the difference being that we would keep F-gas records, so you'd know exactly what type and how much of this refrigerant came out, and exactly what type and how much of this refrigeration went back in. And ideally they should be the same.
So, talking about the potential risk or problem if we don't action this.
Yeah, sure. So I've already touched on what types of refrigerant there are. So let's take R404A for example. That's got a global warming potential of over 3,000. So that's a unit of measure for the damage that this refrigerant could cause to the environment. We service and maintain hundreds of thousands of fridges a year, whether it's planned maintenance, call-outs, whatever, you name it. If we're not doing that properly, if we're allowing them to leak, if we're not repairing those leaks, that just compounds that global warming potential across all those fridges.
I guess from the biggest concern that any business will have is the cost of being sustainable. And I think that's why everybody's taken so long to kind of get to the stage. How cost effective is this?
Again, I mean, it's hard to put a tangible figure on it, because yes, it's going to cost you more to potentially do the maintenance and recover it and have the trained technicians in the right service company, but then you need to think about all the costs behind it. So an inefficient fridge, you're going to get less life out of it, so that's going to affect your capex plans. An inefficient fridge is going to cost more in your utility bills, and maybe more repairs and spare parts along the way.
So for our brothers and sisters in the industry, how can they quantify I mean, what is the cost of being sustainable?
Yeah, so the current state of play, yes, there is a higher initial investment in order to be able to deliver this, and for operators like yourselves to be able to pay for the service. I think the power of the collective, if more people get on board with this, it's going to drive the price down, it's going to drive the quality up, it's going to raise awareness, and people are going to have to start getting on board with it.
So what would they need to do? Who would they need to speak to?
The operators would really need to take responsibility for their own service providers, asking them the right questions. What are you doing with refrigeration? How are you handling it? How are you maintaining it?
Or they can ask you.
Or they could ask MCFT, yeah.
So assuming that everybody was compliant, what's the future?
So, I mean, currently we're talking about just managing what you've got and managing it properly, but I guess the future is looking at different types of refrigerant and different units on that type in the future. So there's a refrigerant called R290, which is a hydrocarbon. We spoke earlier about global warming potential. R404A, for example, it's over 3,000 GWP. R290, the hydrocarbon, it's 3. So it's a massive difference. Global equipment manufacturers, they're having to build their new units on R290 in certain locations. So in the UK, you can't produce things that aren't on R290 anymore. So I think the future is that operators need to accept that it is coming, and they need to start employing service companies that can handle this, and they are trained to look after it and get on board with the...
Take responsibility.
With the ride, yeah.
Noodle fans, we're incredibly excited to be partnering up with McFarling and James' team. They're a like-minded business that cares enough about sustainability as much as we do. If we take into account all the single-use plastic activations that we removed across the market, it was an amazing achievement, but we need to do a step further. So I implore all business operators to think green and join us on becoming more sustainable.
Yeah, no, thanks Steve, and to all the Noodle House guys. Yeah, it's going to be great.